Have you ever looked at a perfectly manicured lawn, a sprawling mansion, or a couple that seems to have it all and felt a tiny nagging sense of suspicion? We're taught from a young age that success looks a certain way: orderly, wealthy, and serene. But what if that serenity isn't the result of a peaceful life, but the result of a very well-constructed cage? We often talk about red flags in relationships as if they're bright neon signs, but in reality, the most dangerous traps are usually carpeted in plush velvet and smell like expensive candles. This is the psychological playground Freida McFadden builds in her gripping thriller, The Housemaid. It's a story that forces us to ask, how far would you go to escape your past? And at what point does your survival instinct turn you into the very monster you're trying to outrun? This book isn't just a whodunit. It's a who is doing it to whom. And why are we letting them? It taps into our deepest anxieties about class, power, and the terrifying realization that you never truly know what's happening behind someone else's front door. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of this narrative, not just to see the plot twists, but to understand the psychological mechanisms of manipulation and the thin, blurry line between a victim and a villain. The first major idea Freida McFadden explores is the desperation blind spot. Imagine you're standing on the edge of a cliff. Your past is a forest fire chasing you, and your only options are to jump or to step into a dark cave that might be full of wolves. Our protagonist, Millie, is an ex-con who is one no away from being homeless and back in a system that wants to swallow her whole. When she lands a job as a live-in maid for the wealthy and beautiful Nina Winchester, it feels like a miracle. But here's the thing about miracles. If they seem too good to be true, you're probably just missing the fine print. Millie ignores the fact that her room is a literal attic that locks from the outside. She ignores the way Nina's moods swing like a pendulum from kindness to borderline psychosis. Why? Because desperation acts like a high-intensity filter. It blurs out the red flags and sharpens the focus on the paycheck. McFadden uses this to show us how the haves and have-nots interact. In the world of this book, the wealthy don't just buy labor, they buy silence and tolerance. Millie isn't just a maid, she's someone with everything to lose, which makes her the perfect target. This book reminds us that vulnerability isn't just a personal trait. It's a commodity that predators trade on. Moving deeper into the house, we encounter the second big idea, the gaslighting playbook. For the first half of the story, we are led to believe that Nina Winchester is the villain. She's messy, she's erratic, and she seems to be sabotaging Millie at every turn. Meanwhile, her husband Andrew is the long-suffering saint. He's handsome, kind, and seems to be the only thing holding the household together. But McFadden is doing something brilliant here. She's showing us how easy it is to weaponize sanity. In modern society, we have this habit of labeling women as crazy or unstable the moment they deviate from a calm, subservient norm. Andrew uses this cultural bias as a weapon. By playing the role of the perfect husband, he makes Nina's outbursts look like madness rather than what they actually are, a trauma response. It's a chilling look at how a master manipulator can control the narrative by simply being the most likable person in the room. This book forces you to look at the nice guy archetype through a much more cynical lens. It asks, is he actually nice? Or is he just very good at managing his PR? The third core framework of The Housemaid is the architecture of control. The house itself is a character. Think about the way the space is divided. The Winchesters live in luxury on the main floors, while Millie is tucked away in a claustrophobic attic. This isn't just about floor plans. It's about the psychological power of domestic spaces. A home is supposed to be a sanctuary, but in McFadden's hands it becomes a panopticon, a prison where the guards are invisible. The physical locks on the doors are metaphors for the psychological locks Andrew places on the women in his life. He uses the house as a stage to perform a perfect life, while the backstage, the attic, the basement, is where the real ugly truth lives. This book suggests that we all have attics in our lives, parts of our history or our personalities that we lock away to maintain a polished exterior. The question is, who holds the key? And what happens when the person you trust with the key decides to never let you out? Then there's the fourth and perhaps most transformative theme, the fluidity of the victim. This is where the book really shifts from a standard thriller into a commentary on survival. Without giving away the explosive middle, the roles of predator and prey begin to flip. We start to see that the victim isn't a static identity. You can be a victim in one moment and an aggressor in the next, especially when survival is the only goal. McFadden challenges our moral compass by asking, is it still evil to do something terrible if it's the only way to stop a greater evil? We like to think of morality as black and white, but the housemaid lives in a deep, murky shade of charcoal. It suggests that when the system, represented by the police or social structures, fails to protect the vulnerable, people will create their own justice. This vigilante survivalism is uncomfortable because it suggests that inside every good person is a capacity for violence, provided the right or wrong circumstances are met. Now, let's talk about the critique. What does the housemaid get right? And where does it falter? From a transformative perspective, this book is a masterclass in pacing. Freida McFadden knows exactly how to manipulate the reader's pulse. She uses short, punchy chapters and constant shifts in perspective to keep you off balance. It's popcorn literature at its finest, but with a sharp, jagged edge. However, looking at it through a more analytical lens, one could argue that the book leans heavily into domestic thriller tropes. The evil husband and the wronged wife are staples of the genre, and at times, the plot relies on characters making choices that feel slightly disconnected from reality just to keep the tension high. But does that matter? In the context of edutainment, the book succeeds because it uses these tropes to highlight real-world psychological concepts like trauma bonding and the cycle of abuse. It might be a heightened reality, but the emotions and the power dynamics it explores are very much grounded in the truth of how human beings interact under pressure. It's a critique of the American dream of suburban perfection, suggesting that the bigger the house, the more room there is for skeletons in the closet. So, what's the final verdict? The Housemaid is a must-read for anyone who enjoys psychological warfare and stories that challenge their assumptions about people. If you're a fan of Gone Girl or The Girl on the Train, you'll find a lot to love here. But McFadden adds a layer of social invisibility that feels particularly relevant in our current economy. It's a book for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider looking in, or for anyone who has ever wondered if their perfect neighbor is hiding something. But beyond just being a fun read, there is an actionable step you can take away from this story. Today, I want you to practice the audit of assumptions. Look at a situation in your life where you've made a snap judgment about someone based on their outward appearance or their social status. Maybe it's the perfect couple on Instagram or the unreliable person at work. Ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have for this belief? Am I seeing the whole person, or am I just seeing the front door they've painted for the world? The Housemaid teaches us that the most important truths are often found in the places we're told not to look. It encourages us to be more observant, more skeptical of perfect narratives, and ultimately, more empathetic to the hidden struggles people are facing. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive our own attics. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychological twists of Freida McFadden's work, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next breakdown of the books that shape the way we see the world. We've got some incredible titles coming up that you won't want to miss. Until next time.